This is Bluebook Test 10, Reading and Writing, Module 1. In the early 1800s, the Cherokee scholar S. created the first script or writing system for an indigenous language in the United States. Because it represented the sounds of spoken Cherokee so accurately, his script was easy to learn and thus quickly achieved blank use. By 1830, over 90% of the Cherokee people could read and write it. So what comes after the colon serves to explain. So this word is defined as leading to a lot of people using it. So widespread, careful, unintended, or infrequent. It's widespread. Due to their often strange images, highly experimental syntax, and opaque subject matter, many of John Ashbery's poems can be quite difficult to blank and are thus the object of heated debate among scholars. So instinctively, I would have said difficult to understand, as in characterized by opaque subject matter, as in difficult to penetrate or comprehend. Is it difficult to delegate, compose, interpret, or renounce? It's interpret. Beginning in the 1950s, Navajo Nation legislator Annie Dodge Waneka continuously worked to promote public health. This blank effort involved traveling throughout the vast Navajo homeland and writing a medical dictionary for speakers of DB, the Navajo language. Notice that the semicolon means it connects two related full sentences, so the fact that she worked continuously matches with her blank effort. Is it impartial, offhand, persistent, or mandatory? It's her persistent effort, right? As in continuously. Kelp forests grow underwater along the eastern Pacific coast. These underwater forests are important to fish and other marine animals. Ocean currents can be powerful and rough, making it difficult for animals to find safe places to hide from predators. The underwater forests slow down the currents. This creates a more blank environment with calmer waters where animals can take shelter. So a calmer environment where they can take shelter, as opposed to places that have powerful and rough currents that are difficult to hide from predators in. It seems like it would be calm. So is it tranquil, dangerous, imaginative, or surprising? It's tranquil. People sometimes dismiss a claim if it comes from a source they regard as self-interested, but from a strictly logical perspective, the source of a claim is blank. It has no direct bearing on whether the claim is true. So whatever goes here is defined as it has no direct bearing on whether whatever. So is that the definition of indistinct, irrelevant, indisputable, or implicit? It's irrelevant, as in does not matter. Jazz tap is a dance form that was first developed in African American communities. Jazz tap was heavily influenced by jazz music, which became widely popular in the United States in the 1920s. Tap dancers were inspired by jazz music's quick rhythms and by the way jazz musicians would make up melodies as they played. As jazz music continued to develop in the 1930s and 1940s, jazz tap evolved with it. Because of jazz music's influence, jazz tap quickly developed into a dance form that was very different from earlier kinds of tap dance. The main purpose of the text, well, without even looking at them, I would have said to describe or outline the history of jazz tap and where it came from. It explains why audiences prefer some kinds of music. No, it's not that why they prefer. It discusses the development of a dance form. That seems good. It describes how to play a musical instrument. No. It emphasizes the popularity of a famous dancer. No, because it's not a dancer, a person. The following text is adapted from Jane Austen's 1814 novel Mansfield Park. The speaker, Tom, is considering staging a play at home with a group of his friends and family. We mean nothing but little amusement among ourselves, just to vary the scene and exercise our powers in something new. We want no audience, no publicity. We may be trusted, I think, in choosing some play most perfectly unexceptionable, and I can conceive no greater harm or danger to any of us in conversing in the elegant written language of some respectable author than in chattering in words of our own. So this is uttered in very old-fashioned, early 19th century English, but I think this person is saying they just want to have fun staging a play, doing something novel. They don't want people to really watch them, and it's perfectly unexceptional, as in it wouldn't bother anyone. best states the main purpose of the text: to offer Tom's assurance that the play will be inoffensive and involve only a small number of people. Maybe. To clarify that the play will not be performed in the manner Tom had originally intended. I don't think so. To elaborate on the idea that the people around Tom lack the skills. No. To assert that Tom believes the group performing the play will be able to successfully promote it. No, it's not promote as in advertise or publicize, because it specifically says we want no audience, no publicity. So answer choice A is correct. Inoffensive matches with perfectly unexceptionable, and only a small number of people matches with among ourselves. French Impressionist artist Edgar Degas insisted that his paintings be kept in their original frames after they were sold. Like many Impressionist painters, Degas used painted frames that stood in contrast to the gold frames frequently seen at the Paris Salon, a prestigious art exhibition that was sponsored by the French government and promoted traditional painting styles. Impressionist painters likely chose these colorful frames to distinguish themselves from what was considered conventional at the time. Impressionist painters often focused on the interplay of color and light in their works. As such, those impressionists who placed their works in painted frames instead of the more traditional gold ones did so for aesthetic reasons. A frame's color was likely chosen because it would harmonize with the colors of subjects in a painting. Gold, conversely, could distract from the subtleties in a painted scene. Both authors would most likely agree with which statement. Gold frames were considered especially desirable by those who purchased works from Impressionist painters. I don't think they actually purchased the works from the painters. And they certainly didn't prefer the gold frames. The colors in an Impressionist painting were often chosen to complement the colors of the frame it would be placed in. Maybe. Many Impressionist painters were intentional about the frames they selected for their works. Maybe. Degas' preferred framing style was different from that of most Impressionist painters. No, it doesn't contrast Degas with the others. So it's either B or C. So, do they complement the colors of the frame that they're placed in? Well, they chose these colorful frames to distinguish themselves from what was considered conventional. Yes, and they also stand in contrast to gold. But do the colors complement the colors of the frame? I'm not quite sure. I don't know if it says that in 1. Let's look at 2. A frame's color was likely chosen because it would harmonize with the colors or subjects in a painting. So this, in text 2, matches with B, but I don't believe that text 1 mentions complementing the colors between the painting and the frame itself. So I believe it's C, which is the more general one. They were intentional about the frames they selected, right? They selected them carefully. Choctaw Cherokee artist J.G. turns punching bags used by boxers into art by decorating them with beadwork and elements of native dressmaking. These elements include leather fringe and jingles, the metal cones that cover the dresses worn in the jingle dance, a women's dance of the Ojibwe people. Thus, Gibson combines an object commonly associated with masculinity, a punching bag, with art forms traditionally practiced by women in most native communities, beadwork and dressmaking. In this way, he rejects the division of male and female gender roles. Which choice best describes Gibson's approach to art as presented in the text? He draws from traditional native art forms to create his original works. Perhaps. He has been influenced by native and non-native artists equally. No, because it doesn't mention any specific artists by name. He finds inspiration from boxing in designing the dresses he makes. I don't think so. He turns the punching bags used by boxers and combines them with elements of dressmaking, but I don't think the boxing itself gives the inspiration to the dresses. He rejects expectations about color and pattern when incorporating beadwork. No, he rejects division of male and female. Of course, it says the word rejects right there, but he doesn't reject the expectation about color and pattern in the beadwork, because when it mentions the beadwork, it says that he's adhering to the native traditions. So I believe the answer is simply A. Believing that living in an impractical space can heighten awareness and even improve health, conceptual artists MG and SA designed an apartment building in Japan to be more fanciful than functional. A kitchen counter is chest high on one side and knee high on the other. A ceiling has a door to nowhere. The effect is disorienting but invigorating. After 4 years there, filmmaker NY reported significant health benefits. Best states the main idea. Although inhabiting a home surrounded by fanciful features such as those designed by G&A can be rejuvenating, it is unsustainable. I don't think so, because the actual outcome as shown at the end is it's disorienting but invigorating, as explained by these people got benefits to their health after they lived there for 4 years. So it may not be the ideal place to live, but it energizes you and makes you feel healthier overall. Designing disorienting spaces like those in the G&A building is the most effective way to create a physically stimulating environment. No, I would shy away from the superlatives where it says the most effective way. As a filmmaker, Y has long supported the designs of conceptual artists such as... No, because it's not about Yamaoka. It doesn't mention that person until the end. It seems like it should be the last one. Although impractical, the design of the apartment building by G&A may improve the well-being of the building's residents. Yes, as in, it is fanciful rather than functional, as in impractical, and it may be disorienting, which is impractical, but it's invigorating as explained by, leading to health benefits. Many insects are iridescent or have colors that appear to shimmer and change when seen from different angles. Scientists have assumed that this feature helps to attract mates but could also attract predators. But biologist KK and a team had the idea that the shifting appearance of colors might actually make it harder for other animals to see iridescent insects. To test this idea, the team put beetle forewings on leaves along a forest path and then asked human participants to look at them. Some of the wings were naturally iridescent. Others were painted with a non-changing color from the iridescent spectrum, such as purple or blue. So kind of a strange experiment, right? They take the wings of certain beetles. Some of them are iridescent, as in shimmering and changing color, and some of them, the purple or blue ones, are just flat. They're static. They don't change, although they are still the same colors. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the team's idea? On average, participants found most of the purple wings and blue wings and far fewer of the iridescent wings. Well, that seems to match up, as in they could find the ones that don't shiver, but they could not find the ones that were shimmering. On average, participants found the iridescent wings faster than they found... Well, no, that's the exact opposite. Some participants reported that the purple wings were easier to see than the blue wings. No, because that differentiates between the two colors of the non-shimmering. Some participants successfully found all the wings. No, it has to compare them. The Post Office is a 1912 play by R.T., originally written in Bengali. The character Amal is a young boy who imagines that the people he sees passing the window of his home are carefree even when engaged in work or chores, as is evident when he says to the daughter of a flower seller, he imagines that they are carefree even when engaged in work, and he's talking directly to a flower seller. Which quotation illustrates the claim? I see you don't wish to stop. I don't care to stay on here either. I don't think so. Oh, flower gathering. That is why your feet seem so glad and your anklets jingle so merrily as you walk. Yes, this has the imagery of imagining that someone is carefree, is ebullient, is joyous while they're going about their tasks. I'll pay you when I grow up. I'll pay when I grow up, before I leave to look for work out on the other side of that stream there. I don't think so. Wish I could be out too. Then I would pick some flowers for you from the top. No. Okay, normally what I do for these is glance at the graph and try to very briefly summarize the information. So the gray and the black start the same. The gray decreases more moderately, while the black decreases more swiftly. No lizards with lizards. They have experiment spider count. To investigate the effect of lizard predation, as in lizards eating, on spider populations, a student in a biology class placed spiders in two enclosures, one with lizards and one without, and tracked the number of spiders in the enclosures for 30 days. The student concluded that the reduction in the spider population count in the enclosure with lizards by day 30 was entirely attributable to the presence of the lizards. So that person is saying the reason that the spider count went down is that the lizards preyed on them, and that's the only explanation. Which choice best describes data from the graph that weaken the student's conclusion? The spider population count was the same in both enclosures on day 1. So that's true, but not the answer. This is the trick wrong answer. So if you don't read the question, you would look at A and think it was perfect. But of course, that has nothing to do with commenting on her conclusion. The spider population count also substantially declined by day 30 in the enclosure without lizards. That seems logical. So if the population went down even without the lizards, as in the light gray bars went down, then the decline in the spiders was not entirely attributable to just the lizards. The obvious explanation instinctively being that the spiders just died of natural causes over the course of a month. So I think it's that. The largest decline in spider population count in the enclosure with lizards occurred from day 1 to day 10. Well, that's true, but not the answer. The spider population count on day 30 was lower in the enclosure with lizards than in the enclosure without lizards. Again, that's true, but not the answer. Many mosquito repellents contain natural components that work by activating multiple odor receptors on mosquitoes' antennae. As the insects develop resistance, new repellents are needed. KD and her team found that EBF, a molecular component of a chrysanthemum flower extract, can repel mosquitoes by activating just one odor receptor, and this receptor, OR13, is present in all mosquito species known to carry diseases. Therefore, the researchers suggest that in developing new repellents, it would be most useful to... So this person and her team found a quicker, more general, more broadly applicable way to do it. So instead of the insects developing resistance, this one component apparently solves the problem better, which most logically completes the text. So instinctively, I would have said it would be useful to go ahead and do this, whatever it is. Identify molecular components similar to EBF that target the activation of OR31 receptors. Maybe. Investigate alternative methods for extracting EBF molecules from chrysanthemums. Well, not quite. That would be how you get the EBF out of the flower. It's more like you should use the EBF or something like it because it solves the problem. So no. Verify the precise locations of OR13 and other odor receptors on mosquitoes' antennae. I don't think so. The exact location on their antennae, I don't think so. Determine the maximum number of photoreceptors that can be activated by a single molecule. Well, no, because that doesn't connect with the EBF at all. So instinctively, I think it's A. EE is a Eurasian plant that has become invasive in North America, where it displaces native vegetation and sickens cattle. EE can be controlled with chemical herbicides, but this approach can also kill harmless plants nearby. Recent research on introducing engineered DNA into plant species to inhibit the reproduction may offer a path toward exclusively targeting EE. Consequently, so when the EE plant comes to North America, it causes the cattle to get sick and it displaces vegetation. So it's bad for the environment. You can control it with chemical herbicides, but the chemical herbicides also have other consequences. Engineered DNA seems to solve this problem, which logically completes the text. Making individual EE plants more susceptible to existing I don't think so. Enhancing the ecological benefits of EE in North America, definitely not. Enabling cattle to consume EE without becoming sick, maybe. Reducing invasive EE numbers without harming other organisms, yes. Yes. Inhibit their reproduction toward exclusively targeting EE. Yes, as in you can get rid of just that plant rather than harming other plants. Yes. While many video game creators strive to make their graphics ever more blank, others look to the past, developing titles with visuals inspired by the 8-bit games of the 1980s and 1990s. Well, instinctively, I paused right here. To make their graphics ever more lifelike, others look to the past, is C. As British scientist PB has observed, the Earth is not a very good timekeeper. Earth's slightly irregular rotation rate means that measurements of time must be periodically adjusted. Specifically, an extra leap second is blank time based on the planet's rotation lags a full 9/10 of a second behind time kept by precise atomic clocks. An extra leap second is added whenever time based on the planet's rotation lags a full 9/10 of a second behind time kept by precise atomic clocks. Well, it's not B as in boy, because the thing after the semicolon is not a sentence on its own, right? Whenever time based on, that's only a fragment, so it's not this. That's also why it's not C as in cat. So it comes down to a question of whether you would pause. I'm going to say it both ways, but ignore what's in the parentheses. Here's A. Specifically, an extra leap second is added whenever time based on the planet's rotation. Or here's D. Specifically, an extra leap second is added whenever time based on the planet's rotation. Yeah, it's D. Makes more sense without a pause. In Death Valley National Park's racetrack playa, a flat, dry lake bed, are 162 rocks, some weighing less than a pound but others almost 700 pounds, that move periodically from place to place, seemingly of their own volition. Racetrack-like trails in the blank mysterious migration. This is possessive, right? So playas, well, it says there's only one playa, so it must be singular possessive, which gets rid of the non-possessive and the plural possessive. And the rocks possess the mysterious migration, and it says that there are multiple rocks, so it must be plural possessive. Along with carbon dioxide concentration and temperature, light intensity affects the chemical reaction rate of blank. As light intensity increases, so does the rate at which the reactants, water and carbon dioxide, are converted into their products, glucose and oxygen. Well, it can't be B as in boy, because that would be a comma splice, because this would be starting a whole new sentence. It's obviously not no pause at all, because that would just blur it together in a way that you can't read. So it's either a conjunction and, or it's a colon that sets up an explanation. Let's consider the colon explanation. Light intensity affects the chemical reaction rate of photosynthesis, as explained by, as light intensity increases, so does the rate at which, that's the explanation answer. Paintings by the renowned 20th century U.S. blank were featured in Artist to Artist, an exhibition at the Smithsonian Art Museum that paired the works of artists whose career trajectories intersected in meaningful ways. I'm going to read it each way. Paintings by the renowned 20th century U.S. artists. Well, it can't be A, because what comes before the colon always has to be able to stand on its own, so it's definitely not that. By the renowned 20th century U.S. artists Thomas Hart Benton and Jackson Pollock were featured in, I think it may well be the one with no pause, but let's always consider all four of them. By the renowned 20th century U.S. artists Thomas Hart Benton and Jackson Pollock were featured in, well, if you want to put comma before and after, you always have to be able to remove it and have it read the same without that. So let's read it without that. By the renowned 20th century U.S. artists Thomas Hart Benton were featured. No, that's definitely wrong. And then D as in dog. Paintings by the renowned 20th century U.S. artists Thomas Hart Benton and Jackson Pollock were featured in. No, because you can't not have a comma right here. So B is the correct answer. In her 2012 analysis of tree rings from Japan's Yaku Island, cosmic ray physicist F.M. noted an anomalous carbon-14 spike dating to 774 to 775 CE, indicating that a massive burst of radiation reached Earth during that time. Blank, this unprecedented radiocarbon surge was dubbed a Miyake event in honor of its discoverer. Fittingly, similarly, however, in other words, well, they named it after her because she was the one who found it, so fittingly makes the most sense, of course. One poll taken after the first 1960 presidential debate suggested that John Kennedy lost badly. Only 21% of those who listened on the radio rated him the winner. Blank, the debate was ultimately considered a victory for the telegenic young senator, who rated higher than his opponent, Vice President Richard Nixon, among those watching on the new medium of television. So, these are opposites. If you listened to the radio, you thought Kennedy lost. But the telegenic young senator, who is of course Kennedy himself, got rated higher than his opponent if you were watching television. So since the second part goes against it, it could have been however, or even but. In other words, therefore, likewise, nevertheless. It has to be nevertheless. That's the only one that's effectively an opposite. In his 1925 book, The Morphology of Landscape, U.S. geographer C.S. challenged prevailing views about how natural landscapes influence human cultures. Blank, S. argued that instead of being shaped entirely by their natural surroundings, cultures play an active role in their own development by virtue of their interactions with the environment. Is it similarly, finally, therefore, or specifically? It seems that this is a specific, this is an example fact that shows how he shows the details of challenging prevailing views. Yeah, as in instead of the prevailing, it's actually this. So specifically makes the most sense. Okay, I always jump right to here. Wants to indicate where the D fossil was found, where it was found. The D fossil was found in western India's Thar Desert. Sounds good. B's team recently found the oldest D fossil ever recovered. No, that doesn't say where. Dr. S.B. of the Indian Institute of Technology is part of a research team. Well, no, of course not. That doesn't say where. The fossil, which is from the D dinosaur group, is 167 million years old. No, again, that doesn't say where. Wants to specify the reason the Pleiades' appearance changed. The reason it changed. Ancient Native American and Australian Aboriginal cultures described the Pleiades, which was referred to in Greek mythology as the Seven Sisters, as having 7 stars. Well, no, that doesn't even mention a change. Although once referred to as the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades appears to have only 6 stars today. Well, that might mention a change, but it doesn't explain the reason. In the time since ancient cultures described the Pleiades as having 7 stars, 2 of the cluster stars have moved so close together that they now appear as 1. That sounds good. The Pleiades has 7 stars, but 2 are so close together that they appear to be a single star. Well, no, because that doesn't say the reason they changed, so it's C. Emphasize the significance of O's discovery. O's 1955 discovery of PNPs proved critical to deciphering the human genetic code, leading to a better understanding of how genetic variations affect human health. That sounds good. O first discovered PNPs, an enzyme that he hypothesized contained the genetic... No, because that doesn't say the significance. In 1955, O discovered the PNPs enzyme, which is involved in both the creation and degradation. Again, that doesn't say the significance. Though his discovery of PNPs was critical to deciphering the human genetic code, O incorrectly hypothesized... Well, no, it can't be that, because the significance has to focus on the positives, so A makes much more logical sense. The student wants to emphasize the decline in unique apple varieties in the U.S. and specify why this decline occurred. The decline in unique apple varieties in the U.S. and specify why that occurred. The Lost Apple Project is dedicated to finding some of the apple varieties lost following a shift in agricultural practices in the mid-1900s. I don't think that emphasizes the decline in unique varieties. It just says they're finding some of them. I'm going to leave that. While over 14,000 apple varieties were grown in the U.S. in the late 1890s, only 15 unique varieties make up most of the apples sold today. No, because that doesn't say why the decline occurred. Since the rise of industrial agriculture, U.S. farmers have mainly grown the same few unique apple varieties, resulting in the loss of thousands of varieties less suitable for commercial growth. Perhaps. As industrial agriculture rose to prominence in the mid-1900s, the number of crops selected for cultivation decreased dramatically. Well, no, because that's not apples in particular, and it's also not in the U.S. in particular, so C is the best answer.